Talk Radio, you're in to all things music.
I think that was the important lesson that I learned pretty quickly, that in order to be the answer to anybody's question, you kind of have to be on their radar. And for a player, you don't really get recommended without that person having played with you so that they can actually tell how you are, when the red light goes on or when the downbeat happens and when it's your turn to play. We live in an era when, demo tapes are, can be as slick as you can make them, but there's no real indication as to the actual organic process, the first take side of you, if you want to call it that.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Welcome to the show, and thank you for tuning in. I want to say a quick thanks to my guest on last week's episode, African-born singer-guitarist Jonathan Butler. If you didn't get to hear it, you can listen to all of our episodes at entertalkradio.com/makingit or download our app and take us with you. Also, be sure to tune in next week for my conversation with TV composer-guitarist Jamie Glazer. I'd like to take a moment to also thank the companies that help me sound my best, whether I'm performing live or in the studio recording and producing music. Blue Microphones, Taylor Guitars, Duesenberg Guitars, Seymour Duncan Pickups, Mesa Boogie Amps, D'Addario Strings and Planet Waves, Motu Digital Performer, IK Multimedia, and Exotic Effects. So often I get asked questions about the creative process. So I created this show to focus on what it takes to have a lasting career in the ever-changing landscape of the music business. You're really in for a treat, as I've invited my friends, some of the best and brightest in music, to share their stories on how they have influenced the music that has shaped our lives. I guarantee you're going to love it. So let's get started. My guest today is musician Peter Gordon. Peter Gordon is the director of Berklee College of Music's Los Angeles office and has been the college's senior West Coast representative for more than 23 years. The Berklee Center in LA was the college's first satellite office, and it has helped create one of the most effective alumni networks in the music industry. Peter's role includes building strategic relationships for the college within the music and entertainment industry, all geared towards creating internship opportunities for undergrads and career opportunities for the alumni. Originally from Australia, Peter began studying flute at the age of 8 and was soon active in regional youth orchestras in both Perth and Sydney. He discovered the world of improvisation in the late 60s when both Jethro Tull and Traffic burst onto the scene, and he eventually decided to attend Berklee. After graduating with a performance degree, he joined Berklee's woodwind department and was on the faculty from 1978 to 1984. After moving to LA in 1985, his freelance performance career began with 3 years touring as part of the Tom Jones horn section, and has subsequently included 3 CDs as a solo artist and recording sessions for numerous film, TV, and video game scores and soundtracks. Peter currently also serves as program committee chair for the Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, is a member of the Society of Composers and Lyricists, BMI, and the Musicians Union. His extended education includes an MBA from Pepperdine University. Please welcome to the show today, Peter Gordon. Hi, Peter. Welcome.
Hi, Terry. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's so nice to have you. You know, since for the people that don't know, I graduated from Berklee as well as you. And since I began the show, I have been wanting to do a feature episode on our school and thinking of the right time to do, but also more importantly, the best way to do it. And I realized that you are the perfect choice of guests to really talk about the school, because you were there as a student, you were there as an instructor, and you were still incredibly active as essentially the West Coast rep for the school, as well as having a thriving career as a player. You're still a professional musician and do sessions and tour and live performing. So I'm so happy to have you here, because we can look at our school through your eyes, through your perspective.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I've been connected to Berklee now for, about 40 years, I think. Firstly as a student, and then faculty, and then moving out to become a working professional, and then now in this capacity, really on the music business side of things for Berklee. And so I guess I'm really blessed when I look at it to see a through line that kind of has music at the center of it. And the fact that I chose to go to Berklee, I think, was a turning point for me in many ways. I met a lot of people that have gone on to become, my friends and kind of key people in my career. And I had to smile when you said that next week you're having Jamie Glazer on,
Right.
Because, he and I were classmates at Berklee, so I just had to smile and just realize that the connections are all over the place,
They are. They absolutely are. And another Berklee alum, John Robinson, JR, has a show, his own show on this network as well, Vinyl
Exactly.
Night. So
yes, indeed.
We are all very connected. You mentioned choosing Berklee as a college, and before I jump into my other questions, let me just respond to that. How did you choose Berklee out of all the schools in the world?
Well, the interesting thing is, back when I was thinking that I was just fascinated with this language of improvisation that was like a brand new language I was hearing for the first time. I was listening to Jethro Tull and Traffic and just the thought that Ian Anderson had really based all of his improvisational ideas on Roland Kirk's improvisational style made me want to go back and delve into that period of mainstream jazz. And I was just fascinated. I had no idea what this language was. I had no idea how to write it, how to play it, how to think it. So I knew that I had to kind of immerse myself in it, just as you would any other foreign language. You go where it's spoken. So I looked around. I asked people that I knew in Australia, and it was generally just down to two choices in those days. The only places people knew to learn about jazz were North Texas State and Berklee. And as I looked into it, North Texas's reputation was huge in terms of the big band genre. And I didn't grow up with big band music, so that wasn't really a sound in my ears at all. I was thinking more in terms of a small ensemble, freedom to improvise kind of environment. And so Berklee just seemed to have that kind of flavor that just stood out. And of course, its reputation was huge. So to me, it was an easy choice, for those two reasons. But even today, I find that, when you go around the world, Berklee is almost mythic, in its in the awareness of musicians around the world. And I think it was that way when I first made my choice. So, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
It sounds very, very similar to my decision-making process also, because it was really a school that was world-renowned, when we both were making our decision on where to study, even though you and I didn't know each other yet. But it was the same thing. I really wanted to have, I wanted to study outside of the classical realm, even though I certainly was interested in learning conducting and studying orchestrations and arranging. But I didn't want to be a classical musician. I wanted to be a pop musician, and Berklee seemed like the only place where that could really truly happen. And it was, and it's changed. It changed while we were there. I think we helped make it change.
Yes.
And I know for a fact I was, I don't want to make this show about me, but just the very fact that the school was so thinking outside of the box that we actually created a major, which I was the first person to graduate under this major. I was the first arranging major at Berklee. They didn't really have a straight, they had big band arranging, and I really didn't want to do that. So we developed just a program called arranging, based on everything that I was interested in learning, which was how to prepare myself to make pop music, and have a strong jazz background. So back to you.
Yes.
You're the director of Berklee College of Music's Los Angeles office.
Right.
Can you describe the specifics of your job?
Well, I think in broad terms, it's really a role that is, I'm here to basically represent the college in LA. And maybe it's not me that's, but the office of the Berklee Center in Los Angeles is here to really be an embassy, if you will, an outpost to develop relationships within the music industry that hopefully will open internship opportunities for undergrads and eventual job opportunities for graduates and alumni. It's here to be a resource center for our alumni once they've arrived here. It is kind of like a hub, if you will, for what has become a very vibrant and successful alumni community. The network in this city is pretty formidable, and I guess I'm lucky enough to have a ringside seat for all of that. So
that's well put.
That's
yes.
And in actual fact, one of the most gratifying parts about when I look back at this role that I've had for the past 20 some odd years is to see how this alumni community has grown and the energy that it generates and the sense of pride, I think, that these alumni genuinely have for being connected to Berklee. That wasn't always the case, When I first arrived in Los Angeles, I felt like there was a little bit of a double-edged sword by, talking about being from Berklee. Mm-hmm. And I think that one thing I remember was as I was trying to find my way into the studio world, somebody made the comment that, Berklee graduates like to interpret what's on the page. And I just thought to myself, maybe that's a little bit of a backlash, from the classical folks who think that Berklee is just a jazz school or a rock and roll school or something. But I heard that comment and I just thought to myself, okay, I've got to be careful how I talk about my background, with regard to Berklee. But there was certainly no real community, no real sense of a network out here when I first arrived, and to look at it now, we do a brunch event in January that's kind of like our signature kickoff event for the year, but it regularly attracts about 500 people, and I think to myself, for a small college to generate that size of event, there are a lot of universities that would be thrilled to have that kind of alumni response. So I think, as I said, just the success on the alumni front to me is very gratifying. So that's it.
And as a graduate of Berklee, okay, thanks for clarifying that. How do you? I want to swap back and forth through this whole conversation with this hour we're spending to talk about both you as an artist and musician, and also the school.
Yes.
So because it's all connected. Starting with, as a graduate of Berklee, how do you think your time studying in Boston prepared you for a career in music?
Wow. I think the lasting benefits were the people that I met there. The number of people who I have eventually gone on to do sessions for, composers that I met in the film scoring class, for instance, when I was playing in ensembles for that particular major, became the people that I called when I came to town. And so in many ways, I think it's the lasting relationships that have stayed with me. I couldn't do a solfege test to save my life right now, so it's not as though it's not the nuts and bolts of what I learned in the classroom. It's the people that I met in the classroom. And I think, and I suppose if I was to take a step back further, I would say that the fact that I was so immersed and in love with, improvisational music at that point has kind of allowed me to continue to evolve, I think, as an individual, but, as a musician as well. So I think that's one of those core themes that, a lot of people from Berklee would probably point to as being one of the big takeaways.
And why do you think that Berklee graduates are typically more successful than from some other schools, particularly in the pop world?
Yeah, I would say that the college made a strategic decision back in the 1980s under Lee Berk at the time, who was the president, to get involved with and incorporate music technology. We created a relationship with Apple back in the very beginning of Apple and Apple's outreach into education, and we became one of their partners very early on. And so this is a decision, as I said, that might have been pretty controversial in the music education world at that time. But I think it laid the groundwork for a culture that enables our students to pretty much absorb all of what they learn in a kind of environment that is technology driven. And so even the jazz saxophone player now, has a better understanding of the music business than I ever did when I was studying jazz saxophone back then. I think they understand the dynamics of having a home studio. I certainly didn't at that time, but I think it's this facility with technology that has allowed our graduates to continue to evolve as the music industry is changing at an increasingly rapid pace. So, it's a cultural way of thinking, I suppose. It's like music as a mindset is really more like improvisation as a mindset that I think our grads typically have in a way that, folks who are trained at a classical conservatory style of curriculum or education would maybe not have.
Right.
Just it's a different culture. It's a comfort level with change, but it's a comfort level with technology too. So right. I think that's got a lot to do with it.
Oh, that's very clear. We're heading into our first break. I'm here with Peter Gordon, the director of Berklee College Music's Los Angeles office, and we are talking about the school that we went to and why it has a reputation as being one of the leaders in contemporary music education. So please stick around. I'll be right back with Peter for the rest of the hour.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talked with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be the music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
My name is Abraham Laboriel, and you are listening to Making It with Terry Wollman.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Wollman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Wollman.
Welcome back. I'm here with my guest, Peter Gordon from Berklee College. And I want to talk about your move to Los Angeles. You originally moved from Australia to Boston, right. and then lived there for quite a while, and then made the trek out here. Right. You moved here in 1985. What were your first few weeks and months like? And did you have any friends, family, or professional contacts? Take me back. I know.
Okay, so this is making me smile now because, for all of what I do to kind of help advise alumni, in their early first steps here in Los Angeles in my current role, I was absolutely clueless when I arrived.
Whose couch did you sleep on?
Well, there are a number of couches, but when I think back, I was actually very excited about the offer to be on the Berklee faculty, right after graduating from Berklee. It was kind of a prestigious honor, and it certainly helped me get my green card, but that really wasn't the big motivation. But, the idea that I was teaching at this college that had drawn me across the ocean to study was, it felt like a feather in my cap. I was feeling pretty good about myself. But, what I realized when I eventually chose to leave and delve into the freelance world was that what I'd actually done was just delay my eventual, leaving of the nest, if you want to call it that, because I had, been on the faculty for at that point 7 years, and I'd been very used to having my life pretty much laid out for me, in terms of lesson plans and scheduling and all that kind of stuff. And I was busy doing gigs at night. So there really wasn't a lot of thought about how to grow my career. And so when I arrived in Los Angeles with my wife, I think I am embarrassed to say I knew about 2 or 3 people. And it didn't get off to a very good start, is all I could say. We found ourselves a nice apartment, but I just kept looking at the phone and thinking, well, how do I get you to start ringing? And so I was a complete neophyte, when it came to that move. And I just think to myself, all of the different things I would have done over differently if I could do it again. But again, I feel like sometimes you learn a lot about yourself when you have to be humbled. And I certainly was humbled in that first 6-7 months. But as luck would have it, I eventually started to do a few casuals. Again, Jamie Glazer's name comes to mind. Jamie was kind enough to get me on some of his gigs, and so I started to make a few dollars. And one particular gig, I met a guitar player that was traveling, I think at the time, with Tom Jones, and was just off the road and picking up gigs to fill in the calendar. And I didn't know him at all, but by the end of the night, we had just had a lot of fun on the breaks and laughed a lot. And And I think I threw out an offhanded comment like, well, hey, if Tom ever needs a saxophone player, give me a call. Ha, 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 you know?
Right.
And you know, ironically, about 2 months later, that call came. And I think that was one of the turning points for me in Los Angeles. You know, it's my first response was that I didn't really come all the way to Los Angeles to play It's Not Unusual and watch New Pussycat every night. But in truth, it was a 5-star tour, and it was more money than I had made before. So, you know, I think in many ways it gave me the freedom then to say that I had a platform underneath me. I had a foundation to build on, and truthfully, some of the people that I met on that band during that experience ended up being very helpful. You know, when I eventually wanted to make my way into the studio world. So there's a lot of interesting twists and turns in life, but that one wedding that I did, or whatever gig it was and I met that guitar player. You just never know who you're playing with. You never know who you're playing for. You know, it's those kind of lessons that like you just have to look back and smile and realize that somebody was smiling on me at that point. So,
well, absolutely, because it wasn't just the fact that Jamie Glazer, you know, had referred you and you had this job and you had a great time, but you had a great musical connection as well as a personal connection with a band member that was able to bring you into the touring world. But the key element is that you actually had the wherewithal to say something, and even something as flippant and with a sense of humor as well. If Tom Jones ever needs a sax player, please call me.
Right.
You have to say that. If you don't, I mean, it seems so obvious, but if you hadn't have said that, you likely would have been just one more guy that was a really great sax player that was fun to hang out with.
Well, and
you,
I appreciate
you might not have
that.
gotten the call.
Yeah. And when I look back at who I was as a person at that time, you know, I definitely had a good dose of a kind of a jazz mentality of let me be judged by what I play, not what I say, kind of thing. And that probably was one of the negative hangovers from my Berklee experience, because, you know, jazz folks can be snobbish, you know, and they can be very.
Yes.
You know, you have to rise to a certain level to belong in the club, so to speak. And I thought that I probably was above playing that wedding in my mind. But, you know, I mean, seriously, you know, you get to those times where you just have to say, you got to get over yourself. And and again, I went through that fairly humbling moment of not really knowing how to get my career going. So that I was actually very grateful to have that wedding that particular night. And so for me to have said what I said, to me was kind of out of character, but it also kind of turned a corner for me as well, because I think I'm doing my current job now for Berklee because I have the skills in a room to create social interaction and make relationships. And I think that when I first arrived in Los Angeles, I had none of those skills whatsoever. So it's very interesting to see how the journey kind of pans out and how you grow into your roles. Yes, for certain. Since you play multiple instruments, and I do as well, so I'm asking from being personally curious about your practice, your regimen. Yep. What's a typical day like for you? How do you keep your chops up on all the different instruments that you play, as well as balancing your busy work schedule, doing sessions, and, you know, being a rep for Berklee? Okay, so what's your day like? This is where the truth comes out, right? I don't really practice anymore. Okay. And I say that slightly, well, I have to say it carefully, because there's some people that say, oh, yeah, and it sounds like it. But I'm teasing. I'm kidding. I think that I've heard you play. It doesn't sound like it. So thank you. I appreciate that very, very much. I was really blessed to have started playing very young, and I think the foundation that I had, especially on flute, was just one of those kind of blessings that you can't quantify. I get to a point now where I'm very comfortable in my instruments, and I probably, if I get a session and I know in advance what instruments I'm going to play, I will certainly make sure with about 20 minutes to half an hour on those instruments to make sure that, the reeds are in great shape. My embouchure is good on piccolo and bass flute and all those other things that I have to play. The last thing I want to do is go in and lay an egg, but I feel very comfortable that I can do that and be very professional about it at this point. And now on the flip side of that, it means that I'm not really growing as a musician anymore. And that's perfectly okay with me. I kind of came to a point a while back where I realized that the passion in me for continuing to break through into new territory just wasn't there anymore, And so interestingly to me, I'm I've kind of got to this point where I look at myself in very real terms and I just say, I love recording. I love playing, when I'm recording. And then when I leave, I just turn the corner and go on to what's next. There was a time when I was first starting in Los Angeles where I used to angst over every gig that I did. Did I do a good enough job? Am I going to get called back again? Maybe somebody else is going to get called the next time. That sense of not being sure about yourself, which I think is part of the artistic mindset in a way.
Right. It keeps us growing as artists. Absolutely.
Yeah. Self-doubt. But I just kind of turned away from that a while back. And so I'm at this point where I feel like I'm on a plateau and I feel very comfortable on the plateau. It's a nice plateau, it's not, but I don't really go out into jazz clubs anymore and do, 30-minute solos or anything. It's just not the way my mind is wired anymore. So it's interesting. But so my day actually is more about my Berklee job than it is about playing in general.
You have said to me in previous conversations that whatever you are doing right now is a function of everything that has preceded it. And I couldn't agree more with you. Can you elaborate on that, Peter? Well,
I think there are probably numerous anecdotes that I could share because, well, here's the easiest one. When I graduated from high school in Australia, I was just becoming enamored with playing in pop and rock bands, with the kinds of early improvisational skills that I was testing out, and I had a scholarship at the end of high school to go to university in Sydney, and I had
no idea what I wanted. Was it a sports scholarship or music?
No, music.
Okay, I know you were an athlete when you were young.
No. Yeah. No, this was actually academic. So
got it.
But I had no idea what I wanted to focus on, And my dad was a banker, and so he just said to me, why don't you do economics? That'll stand you in good stead. And I thought, well, I haven't really studied economics before, and I really don't like any of the other subjects I was studying in high school. So yeah, let's give that a shot. Well, I would have to say that I hated every minute of it. Because I was increasingly starting to self-identify as a musician, as a creative sort, maybe I was in fantasy land, but I kind of saw myself as being, somebody who belonged playing music, and it may have just been a romantic notion. It may have just been a function of me as a child of the 60s wanting to rebel. But there I was studying economics in Sydney. And honestly, by the time I graduated, I couldn't run in the opposite direction fast enough. and that really meant, becoming a musician full time.
Right.
And so with that said, of course, then I went and, discovered that I wanted to go to Boston, and off I go to Berklee. I got through my 10 years at Berklee, both as a student and a faculty member, and I come to Los Angeles and I go through the process of breaking into the studios and thinking to myself that I'm very lucky that I grew up as an orchestral musician, because my reading chops were pretty great. And that was about the one asset that I was totally confident about. And there I was, in 1994, being chosen to become the first director of Berklee's first satellite office. And when I look back on it, I realized that the irony in all of this is that they gave me that gig, I think, not only because of my connections in the music industry, but because I had a business background,
Right.
And of course,
Right.
I didn't really have a business background, but I had an economics degree, which to me is just hysterical in terms of its irony, because I hated that moment. But and there I was just having to smile and if I hadn't done the classical flute stuff, I wouldn't have had the reading chops. If I hadn't done the economics degree, I probably wouldn't have the Berklee gig. If I hadn't done the Berklee gig, I couldn't have possibly sent my two kids to really good universities, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of those things that you can tie around, and you just have to smile sometimes and realize that there is a very interesting irony in life, and sometimes you just have to be paying attention.
Well put. Your Berklee job puts you in the very unique position of being the designated West Coast greeter or liaison for newly graduated students who are just starting their careers. What advice do you give to young musicians who have recently moved to town?
Well, the first thing I tell them is that they have gone to a music college that has a fairly sizable footprint in Los Angeles, and that they already belong to a professional organization, if you want to call it that. They have a membership, and they should get busy getting active in that world. There is kind of an inbuilt network for them, but they just have to go and discover it and become visible in that network. So in essence, it's like, go get busy. If you're watching television, you're missing the point. You shouldn't ever have a moment where you're not doing something creatively towards, either having a conversation, even if you're going out with some friends, music friends, and you're going to the Dodgers game or whatever. I mean, the truth is you're spending time, you're creating relationships that become friendships that in many ways are the foundation for opportunities, that will come in the future. So it's like planting seeds,
Yeah, I do. That sounds like excellent advice. We are heading into our second break. We've got about 30 seconds. The question that we will come back with that you can think about during the break is, what advice was given to you when you first moved to Los Angeles? I know that I was given some very invaluable advice as well. So why don't you think on that?
I will. Thank you.
And very quickly, can you share the Berklee website?
Oh, just berklee.edu. You just type that into your browser. Berklee, BERKLEE.edu.
And we will be right back with Peter Gordon. So please stick around.
This is Phil Perry. Stay tuned for another portion of Making It with Terry.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
This is Jonathan Butler, and you're listening to Making It.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Welcome back. The question that I had asked my guest, Peter Gordon, and welcome back, Peter, during going into the break was, what advice was given to you when you first moved to LA?
You know, as soon as you said it, there was just like this blank page that came up in front of my eyes. And I just thought, I was so kind of focused on the fact that I was getting out of Boston and I was coming to Los Angeles that I don't think I asked that question too often, or often enough, should I say. And so once I arrived here, I met a few, let's say I would go to the Baked Potato and just kind of hang out. And I met a few people there and just started to get a sense of what they were doing with their careers when they were not doing gigs at the Potato. Justo Almario was one of those people that I remember was very kind to me at first. Another saxophone player, Doug Norwine. I don't know if you ever knew Doug.
Sure, I know Doug and Justo.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the Berklee connection, again, for both those guys. Doug had been a faculty member at Berklee. But, you know, Doug helped me get some casual work, I suppose. And for those who are listening who know what casuals are, it's basically, you know, gigs that are put together with you know, high-functioning musicians who can go out and do weddings and parties and pretty much play, you know, any tune off the top of their head. And for whatever reason, I was able to do those gigs pretty effectively. And it was a way of making money. It wasn't exactly highbrow artistically, but, you know, you got to meet people that way. And I think that was the important lesson that I learned pretty quickly, that in order to be the answer to anybody's question, you kind of have to be on their radar. And for a player, you don't really get recommended without that person having played with you so that they can actually tell how you are, you know, when the red light goes on or when the downbeat happens and when it's your turn to play, you know. We live in an era when, you know, demo tapes are, you know, can be as slick as you can make them, but there's no real indication as to the actual organic process, the first take kind of side of you, if you want to call it that. So, yeah, for me, it was just I was scrambling, and I can't really say there was one piece that stood out as far as advice is concerned. What do you remember?
I remember I went to the Baked Potato also, and to all the clubs and started meeting people. But one of the first professional musicians that was doing what I wanted to do that I befriended was Dean Parks, guitarist and friend. And Dean gave me some invaluable advice that I still remember, which is always show up early. He said, bring a book, bring something to do, but show up early. You can never predict what the traffic's going to be. Bring extra pencil, bring extra guitar picks, strings, batteries, and just have a good attitude. And get out in the clubs and go introduce yourself to people. Go hear music and say hi and start to develop relationships and friendships. But, you know, that show up early and bring an extra pencil. And that has stuck with me. And it was really great advice.
I wish I'd have spoken to him.
I'm sorry you didn't.
Yeah, I'll tell you my story. I was booked for a Disney session at a studio out by Pasadena somewhere. I've forgotten the exact name of it, but I was driving to this session on a day that was just torrential rain, and I was probably a little cavalier about giving myself enough time to get there. And it was an orchestral date, big contracted session, and I showed up right at 10 o'clock, right as downbeat was supposed to happen. And I'm walking in, and the contractor had to call at 10 before the session had even started. And of course, that makes all the rest of the musicians not particularly happy. Mm-hmm. And so, feeling very sheepish, I got in there and I realized, well, I had just dealt with, ridiculous LA traffic in a very unusual torrential downpour. And yes, I could make all the excuses in the world, but the truth is everybody else got there on time and I didn't.
Right. They were in the same traffic.
And that was, and that was the last time I worked for that contractor. So, I mean, to me, that's a lesson that I will tell young Berklee grads now that I learned the hard way, but it's wonderful advice. It's that old expression, if you're early, you're on time. And if you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, you're fine, late. That's
right. You weren't given a second choice or a second chance with this contractor.
Not. No,
right.
No, absolutely not.
And it didn't matter how great you played.
No, it had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. At a certain point, you just have to be able to do the job in a way that makes everybody else, as effective as they can be, including that contractor, by the way, because he probably ended up not looking so good by having this guy straggling in right at the downbeat time. So,
well, you can count on it. Yeah.
So, a lot of lessons to take away, but it's one that stuck with me for sure.
Do you think it's important to live in a major city in order to have a successful career as a musician these days?
Yes and no. I think it's vital to be in a big city or at least a big market when you're starting out. But of course, the more our careers are defined and governed and driven by technology, then the ability to be remote, of course, becomes a greater and greater option. In fact, so many studio gigs now are things that are expected to be done in your home, in your own home studio, and you just upload the tracks afterwards, right? So think about how much that's changed the recording environment. I mean, a composer that I know somewhat, Alan Silvestri, is extremely busy, extremely successful. He lives in Monterey. And has a lovely vineyard that he lives on, and is able to have this life that is both bucolic, if you will, and yet still very connected to his film composing career. And that's only possible, I believe, because he was who he was when he decided to leave Los Angeles and go to Monterey. I think anybody who makes that choice to live, Howard Shore is another person who lives in upstate New York, in a small town. And I think to myself, okay, so how do you live on the other side of the country and still be a major force in, film music? Well,
you start by firmly establishing yourself.
Yeah, you start by being a major force, You make that choice when you have the luxury to make that choice. So,
right.
So the answer is, if for anybody who wants to break in, you have to be swimming in the biggest pool possible, and with as many other people as possible. And I think the analogy there is obviously geared towards L.A., Nashville, and New York.
Well, which leads me to my next question. You travel quite a bit for your job. Do you find that there are any particular cities that offer more work opportunities for musicians? You just named 3.
Well, my observation, I suppose, is that New York has probably become, there's a lot of studios that have closed in New York. There's a lot of film composers that I know that I work for here in Los Angeles who used to live in New York. and were busy as composers back in New York, but moved to Hollywood or Los Angeles for a very good reason, and that is that their work came out here. I think that New York is still, nominally the hub of jazz in this country, but fewer and fewer young people are choosing to go into, mainstream jazz. So I think the draw towards New York is not as great as it once was. Although I will say there's kind of a burgeoning songwriter scene in Brooklyn that, I see a lot of our Berklee grads going into. Mm-hmm. And so there's a kind of a rebirth, if you will, in Brooklyn in the artistic kind of way that we may have thought of the Village back in the 60s and 70s with jazz. But Nashville is a very interesting example because it's a right-to-work state. It's in a right-to-work state, which means that union musicians can do both union gigs and non-union gigs. And at the risk of me stepping over the line now and getting controversial about the musicians' union,
I encourage you to be controversial.
Yes. So here I go.
Yeah.
I believe in the fact, the benefits of being part of the musicians' union, but I truly believe that the leadership in Los Angeles has contributed to an environment that is much less friendly to filmmakers and much less friendly to producers who have to decide where the music and the post-production is done. Right. So a lot of work has been driven from Los Angeles because of a kind of an inflexibility, if you will, for old contracts that were written in a different era, say in the 80s, when there was a kind of a golden age of recordings and the union had a lot of leverage and guys were doing triple sessions and a lot of those back end deals, in other words, back end meaning the royalties that are due in reuse, for instance, they just weren't flexible about rewriting those deals when the landscape of the industry was changing. And I think that, I personally know and have had a conversation with the head of music at Sony PlayStation, and he did everything he could. He lives in San Francisco, and he did everything he could to write a contract that would employ the San Francisco symphony players to record up at Skywalker. And for a brief moment, that was working. So his world of video game music, as it was becoming more and more sophisticated, and the budgets were increasing, and he was able to afford an orchestral date. He did it at Skywalker with the San Francisco guys. Well, the guys in Los Angeles apparently didn't like that very much, and were very active in voting that particular president of the International Union out of the job. And the moment he left his position, of course, the deal with the video game deal was torn up. And at that point, my friend at Sony PlayStation said, "Well, it is." And he did. He and I have lunch from time to time, and he just shrugged his shoulders and said, "I tried. I would really much rather have the ability to go to LA and do sessions there, or use the union guys because they're so great. But the climate has just been so antagonistic that he said, now I'm taking all my productions to Nashville because I can get all of the union guys down there. And although they're not really as polished as the LA guys, they will be very soon because I'm going to take all of my work there." And,
right.
Now his counterpart at Electronic Arts is somebody that I also know. And, he now lives in Nashville because that's where he does all of his music as well. Right. So I'm thinking that there's this magnetic pull towards Nashville that really doesn't have to do with country music anymore. It's solely country music, shall I say?
Right.
It's about a much more friendly scene, if you will. I think the studio musicians down there have always been legendary as far as their ability to do country music, but I would say now that they're becoming very adept at symphonic recording as well, and
as well as pop and rock, and
all of those things. And I just think it's a much better business environment for people who want to kind of look at their budget and figure out how to spend the money. that they've got to spend.
Absolutely.
So, I'm probably going to get hate mail, but the fact is I'm still a musician. Yeah. I'm still a union member. I still wish it were different. I would still like to find ways that work would stay in town. And I think there are signs that I'm seeing, film production work, being enticed back to Los Angeles. So it's quite possible more scoring will be done here as well. But I should also say that when I travel to Atlanta, my son's in college down there, and on one trip I was invited to talk to a lady who is in charge of music for the Atlanta, some branch of the government down there. But she wanted to come to Berklee and talk to all of our grads about moving directly to Atlanta to get into film post-production and the hip-hop scene, the production down there. And as you well know, it's kind of one of the capitals for the hip-hop business. And what I didn't know, and she told me, was that some of the major studios, one particular English studio that Shepperton, I think I can't remember the name, maybe that's it. But she said they're setting up an entire campus just outside of Atlanta, and they're going to be doing all of their work in the United States in this campus. And she said you're going to see more and more of that happening, as the climate in Los Angeles becomes more, restrictive and less favorable. Yeah.
I need to get you to my final question because we've only got 2 minutes left in the show. First of all, I want to thank you for speaking so honestly, and people need to be able to speak freely about everything we love about our music union and everything that we are frustrated with, so that we can move things to a place where, where things will continue to work. And, it's the same in our government right now. People need to be able to speak their mind and their heart, and listen to each other, whatever side of the fence they're on. So thank you for your honesty on that. We've got a minute and a half left, and I've got the final question that I ask all of my guests, which is, at this point of your life, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh, my goodness. I would probably say just be more confident in the gifts that you were given. I think I was probably intimidated when I first arrived in Los Angeles. I think I looked around at some of the giants in the recording world that I had dreamt about, sitting next to in sessions and stuff, and I just didn't necessarily have the confidence to just jump right in. So there was a bit of self-doubt in all of that, and I think in truth I probably should have embraced the idea of something in the music business field, because I think I'm actually pretty well wired for that now as I look back on it. So something in the business of management could be touring, something like that. But those are the areas of the industry that I'm fascinated with now. That the industry is really growing and it's dynamic, and it scares a lot of people who are still rooted in the old business model. But I am much more fascinated by all of the new stuff that's happening. So I think,
and we are out of time.
Yeah,
thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you for your answer. It's been a pleasure spending the hour with you, Peter Gordon, Berklee College of Music. Really appreciate
it.
Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
See y'all next week.
Episode of Making It with Terry Woman.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time, or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.